So now what we need to do is we need to keep track of who is alive in the map and who is dead, because we can't really display here in the UI who won if we don't really know who is on the map and what team they are on. So we also need to know what team are they on. For example, there could be 5 people alive and they are all on the same team. For example, counter terrorist, and all the terrorist is dead. So we need to display counter-terrorist win even though we have 5 alive, because they might be from the same team. So we need to know that. So let's do that inside of the game mode, because inside of the game mode, we actually decide all of those rules. And what we can do here is let's add 2 variables first. Let's add one called players alive. And let's add, before we add it, let's actually change the variable type. So for the variable, I want to change this to player base. Go ahead and select the player. So now I believe this is wrong. So let's again search for weapon base, not weapon base, but player base. And it is this one, not this one. So this one here, player base. And now instead of just an original variable here, let's make it to a map. And what a map is, as you can see here, it can hold 2 values. So if you just select it here and we just compile, you can now see we have this player base, but we also have the second variable beside it. And you can actually assign different things to this player now. So if I click on the plus, for example, if I add a player here, I can also add a number here. And this map variable, you can actually use it like in different scenarios. So you can have 2 variables. For example, you can have each player and also how many kills they have. So each player is inside of this list, and it also has how many kills they have, for example. But what we want to do is we want to have this player, and we also want to know which team they are on, because this is something we need here to see if all of on the same team are alive or if they're dead and all of that. So let's change this one again to an actor class reference, because this is our team, and I'm just going to change this variable type. And here we have it. So now we have this variable, we have the player, and we can, if I just compile, this will disappear. So if I compile, now we can have the player, and we can also have here which team they are on. So now we can have each player and which team they are on. Okay, so we have this players alive. I'm going to make a new one called players dead. And let's make a last one later on, and we will work with that later, but let's make it now called players spawned. So we're going to use that later, and this one is just going to be a normal array, and so we just know how many players has spawned inside of the map. Let's begin here. Let's make a new custom event, and this one we're going to call add to players alive map. And this one is called a map, by the way. This is a single variable, an array, a set, and now we're working with a map. So add to players alive map. So what we are going to do is we're going to take this and say add, and here we can add the player. So I can actually we need to have this player reference. So we can just drag and plug it into here, and this is the player base. I'm just going to rename it to player. And before I do this, the player might be dead here. The player might be added to this player's dead, because when they respawn, they will be added to this here. So what we need to do first actually is take this and say find, and we can use this. And by the way, for maps, you can just drag here, go to utilities, go to map, and here are the functions you can use with it. You can see there aren't really much you can do with it. You can add, clear, find something, ask if it is empty, and so on. So not really much to do with it. What we want to do is we'll try to find this player and see if this player is inside of this map. And let us just connect it here. So find here, and let us make this branch to ask if it has found the player inside of here. Let me just move this down for a bit. So if we find the player, we want to take this and say remove, and select the remove function, and go ahead and remove this player from the player's dead. Let me just double click here and make a reroute node so it is organized. And now I'm going to drag from this player Go ahead and connect it. Again, double click. I'm going to move all of this down so I have more space to work with. And we can move this down like this. And now it is here. So we are going to find this player inside of the player's dead map. And we're going to remove the player if the player has been found. However, if the player has not been found, we just continue the code. So what we want to do here is this one where we add the player to the players alive now. So we remove the player from the players dead, and now we're going to add this player to the map. And this is the player. Again, we can just disconnect this because now we have this reroute node. I'm going to double click here and plug it into here. Again, double click here and just add it to down here. So now what we need to do is we actually also need this here. We need to know what team is this player on. And to do this, we need to get a reference to the player controller because remember, inside of the player controller, we have this variable and we need it. So let us go down here. Let me move this away. And what we can do is double click here to make a reroute node. We can drag here and say get controller. Go ahead and select it. Because remember, this is the player. So we're trying to get this player's controller. And then from the Blueprint interface, we made the get player controller reference. And now we have the player controller. So now we can access everything inside of this player controller. And we want this team variable. So let's drag here and say team and get this team variable. And now we can click and drag and plug this into here. And let us just plug it into here. And I'm going to move all of this down so I have more space, just like this. And let's move it closer and connect it. So now we are actually adding this player to the map and we're removing the player from this player's dead. Okay, so now this is finished. Let us compile everything and let us move on to the next one.